Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something, well, pretty fundamental. We're looking at sources, philosophical texts, some deep contemplative research, even modern brain mapping that all point to this idea of a radical transformation. A transformation in the actual structure of how we're aware of things.
Right.
And when we say radical, we really mean it in that original sense, from the radix,
Yeah.
the root.
Exactly. Not just intense, but changing the base operating system.
Yeah, moving away from our usual way of thinking, this kind of representational mode, towards something the sources keep calling self-luminous being. Swayam Prakasha Chaitanya.
A mouthful, but a powerful idea.
It is. And our mission today is basically to unpack that shift. How does it happen? What does it feel like? What does it mean?
And I think, we have to start right there with the core idea from these texts.
Yeah.
That our ordinary way of being aware, the way you and I are probably experiencing things right now,
Yeah.
it's got a kind of structural glitch built in.
A glitch, okay.
Yeah, it's trapped in this split.
Yeah.
Philosophers call it the subject-object polarity.
The me versus the world feeling.
Kind of. Think of your awareness like a light, but it's shining through a window that's maybe a little smudged.
Okay.
The light shows you the world, objects, thoughts, feelings, whatever. But the act of shining itself seems to create this separation. There's you, the subject doing the seeing, and then there's the thing being seen, the object.
And the really interesting thing, and kind of the core problem, is that the mind spends all its time chasing satisfaction out there, right, in those objects or even internal images, because it's basically forgotten.
Forgotten that it is the light source.
Exactly. It thinks the light comes from the objects.
And that fundamental misunderstanding, that split, is what builds the whole architecture of desire, of craving, of constantly needing something external.
Okay, so let's dig into that. If that subject-object split is the foundation, what do the sources mean by the representational regime? How does that work day to day?
Well, the representational regime is kind of our default setting. It just means that almost everything we experience isn't direct. It's mediated.
Mediated
By internal symbols, mental pictures, the words we use to label things, even the emotional tags we put on experiences. We're not really touching reality directly. We're interacting with these complex internal models of reality.
So our brain is constantly building models.
Constantly. And crucially, it's building predictive models. It's not just reacting. It's always trying to guess what's coming next based on past data.
Which sounds exhausting.
It is energetically expensive.
Yeah.
Your nervous system is running these complex forecasts all the time. And every time the prediction is a little off, there's an error signal, and it takes energy to adjust the model.
And that energy cost, it's not just abstract, is it? The sources talk about our vital energy, Press.
Right. They describe it as flowing centrifugally.
Outward.
Outward. Always moving towards potential objects of desire, towards external input to feed those predictive models.
And neurologically, that connects to dopamine.
Specifically, phasic dopamine. Phasic means these short, sharp bursts.
Little dings we get.
Exactly. Checking email, scrolling feeds, finding something new or unexpected. It's the brain's way of flagging prediction errors, signaling novelty, and basically saying, hey, pay attention to this. It might be rewarding. It keeps us scanning, searching, seeking.
And I think everyone listening can probably feel the downside of being stuck in that mode. You start identifying with the stuff in your awareness, the thoughts, the feelings, the things you want.
Instead of identifying with the awareness itself, the field.
Right. Is that what the texts mean by avidya, this misidentification?
That's the core of it. Avidya isn't just not knowing stuff. It's fundamentally mistaking the contents for the container, mistaking the movie for the screen.
And that mistake keeps us bouncing back and forth.
Between two poles, yeah. The
Yeah.
sources call them rajas and tamas. Rajas is that agitated, restless, striving energy, always chasing the next dopamine hit,
The hamster wheel.
pretty much. And then inevitably you hit tamas, the inertia, the dullness, the burnout, when the stimulation stops or isn't enough anymore.
So you're oscillating, craving, and then crashing, but never finding a stable center.
Never finding real equilibrium. Because the system is always looking outside for its fuel, for its validation.
Okay, so the promise here, the reason we're doing this deep dive, is about what happens when that outward seeking stops, when the oscillation breaks.
Exactly. The transformation kicks off when attention does something unnatural for the representational regime. It turns back on itself.
How? Through specific practices.
Yes, things like pratyahara, which is often translated as sense withdrawal, but it's more like a recentering of the senses inward in dhyana, That's sustained contemplative focus or absorption.
And when the mind stops projecting outward like that.
Something remarkable happens. The observer and the observed, the subject and the object, they reveal themselves as not actually separate. They're seen as just different ripples, different modulations on one underlying field of awareness.
Okay, now this feels like the core moment. The sources describe this as a phase shift. That sounds dramatic, like flipping a switch, not just gradual change.
It is dramatic. It's a systemic reconfiguration. Internally, the system shifts into what scientists are starting to call metastable coherence.
Metastable coherence. Let's break that down. Coherence means things are working together harmoniously.
Precisely. Think of different instruments in an orchestra suddenly playing in perfect tune and rhythm. Your brain waves, your heart rhythms, your breathing patterns, they all synchronize. They fall into this beautiful harmonic order.
And metastable, what does that add?
Metastable means it's stable, but it's not rigid. It's a dynamic stability. It's highly resilient. It can adapt instantly to change without losing its core coherence. It's not fragile.
And what does that feel like? Subjectively?
The descriptions often use phrases like silence that vibrates, or a deep, profound stillness that's somehow also incredibly alive and radiant. The usual mental friction, that sense of effortful processing, just isn't there.
The tantric tradition has a metaphor for this, right? Something about a central channel.
Yes, the sumanat. It's a powerful image for this internal realignment.
So instead of energy flowing outward,
The idea is that the subtle energy, sometimes called ochas, starts to naturally flow upward along this central axis, from the base, the muladhara, towards the crown, the sahasrara.
and this isn't about forcing energy.
No, that's key. It's spontaneous. It happens because the blockages to the natural inward-upward flow, the constant outward seeking, have been removed. The centrifugal flow reverses, becomes centripetal. The system starts to feed itself from its own source.
Which brings us back to a really crucial point from the sources. This whole transformation is fundamentally subtractive.
Yes, you're not adding anything new. You're not gaining some superpower.
You're removing the layers of misidentification, the illusion of separation.
Exactly. You're changing the form, the very structure of consciousness, allowing its inherent nature to shine through, rather than just swapping out the content, the thoughts and feelings within the old structure,
The mind stops being just a mirror reflecting things.
and realizes it's the light itself.
Wow, okay. And you mentioned neuromapping earlier. This isn't just philosophy or metaphor anymore, is it? We can actually see correlates of this shift in the brain.
We can. Modern neuroscience is giving us fascinating glimpses into the physiology of these states. We can actually measure markers that align beautifully with these descriptions of Svayam-prakasha, this self-luminous coherence.
Okay, let's get specific. What are the key physiological signs? What changes in the brain and body when someone stabilizes in this state?
There are 4 big ones that consistently show up in the research. First, and maybe most famously, a significant reduction in default mode network activity, the DMN.
Right, the DMN, that's basically the brain's me network, isn't it? The part that worries, plans, ruminates about the past, tells stories about ourselves.
That's a great way to put it. It generates that constant internal monologue, the sense of a separate, enduring self. So when its activity drops, a lot of that mental noise, that self-referential chatter just quiets down.
Less noise, more signal. Makes sense. What's number 2?
Second, we see enhanced coherence between the insula and the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC.
Okay, what do they do together?
The insula is crucial for interoception.
Yeah.
That's your ability to sense your internal bodily state. Hunger, heartbeat, gut feelings, that kind of thing. The ACC is involved in regulation, decision-making, error detection.
So better coherence means?
I mean, you get much more accurate, high-fidelity information about your internal state, greater interoceptive precision. And critically, this leads to much better emotional regulation. You feel things clearly, but you're not overwhelmed. You can respond wisely instead of just reacting.
Okay, so less ego noise, better internal awareness, and emotional balance. What about overall brain function?
That brings us to number 3, gamma band synchronization. We see these high-frequency brain waves, gamma waves, synchronizing across large areas of the cortex.
And gamma is associated
with binding information together, with insight, high-level cognition, and consciousness itself. Widespread gamma synchrony suggests a brain that's highly integrated, processing information seamlessly and efficiently, like a well-orchestrated symphony.
integrated function. Got it. And the fourth one?
Number 4 relates to the body's overall stress and relaxation system. We see elevated heart rate variability, HRV, and increased vagal tone.
HRV, that's the variation in time between heartbeats, right? High HRV is good.
Very good. It signals a flexible, adaptable autonomic nervous system, the system that controls fight or flight and rest and digest. High HRV and strong vagal tone mean you can shift smoothly between alertness and deep calm. Your baseline is relaxed resilience.
That whole physiological picture, low noise, high integration, deep calm, resilience, it sounds exactly like what the classical texts describe as sattva go.
It really does map beautifully. Sattva represents clarity, harmony, balance. When sattva is dominant, the sources say the system operates with low entropy, minimum wasted energy, maximum efficiency.
And that connects to the Gita's idea of yoga karmasu kaushlam.
Skill in action. When your inner system is aligned and coherent, operating from sattva's skillful, effective, almost effortless action naturally arises. You're not fighting internal friction.
Okay, and let's connect this back to dopamine. We talked about the phasic bursts driving the representational regime. What happens to motivation in this sattvic, coherent state?
This is fascinating. The reliance on those external phasic dopamine hits seems to be replaced by tonic regulation.
Tonic meaning steady, continuous.
Exactly. Tonic dopamine provides a stable baseline level of motivation and alertness. Awareness can sustain itself without needing constant external novelty or reward hits to feel alive or engaged.
But wait, practically speaking, does that mean you lose drive? If you don't have those phasic spikes, how do you get motivated for challenging things?
It's a different kind of motivation. It's not the frantic chase driven by perceived lack. It's more like a calm, steady expression of the system's inherent vitality and clarity. You act because the action aligns with the system's harmony, not because you're craving a reward hit. The energy is self-sustaining, intrinsic.
Like a well-charged battery maintaining a steady output rather than needing constant jump starts.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And this shift, this move from phasic seeking to tonic expression, is part of that fundamental ontological shift we mentioned.
A change in the very mode of being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Consciousness transitions from what the texts call paroka jhana, indirect knowledge, knowing about something like reading a map,
Tuapo oparoka jhana.
direct, immediate, self-evident knowledge. Knowing as the thing itself, like actually being in the territory shown on the map. There's no mediation, no representation.
And the culmination is stillness and dynamism together.
Simultaneously.
Yeah.
The deep stillness of pure awareness, Shiva, and the vibrant dynamism of creative power, Shakti, are no longer seen as alternating or opposing forces. They're experienced as two aspects of one reality, constantly co-arising. That's the concept of spanda, this vibrant, unified pulsation.
Constant creation arising from perfect stillness.
And it never leaves that stillness.
So this huge internal shift, it must change how you interact with everything, right? What are the consequences for how we relate to the world, to others, for ethics, for beauty?
Absolutely, the consequences are profound. Let's take ethics first. When that fundamental subject-object split dissolves, the ethical consequence is almost automatic.
How so?
Compassion, mahakarin or daya in the texts, stops being a rule you follow or an effort you make. It becomes the natural expression of your perception.
Because you no longer see others as truly separate.
Exactly. If the core structure of your awareness is unity, is shared luminosity, then the suffering or joy perceived out there isn't actually out there. It registers immediately as a modulation within the same field you inhabit. You feel it directly.
So empathy isn't just imagining what someone feels, it's a direct recognition.
A direct resonance. It becomes almost structurally impossible not to be compassionate because the illusion of fundamental separation has collapsed.
Wow. Okay. And aesthetically, how does the experience of beauty change?
That changes radically too. Beauty stops being just a quality you find in certain beautiful objects or forms.
Like a sunset or a piece of art.
Right. Instead, beauty becomes the inherent resonance between consciousness and whatever's arising in experience. Every moment, even the most ordinary, can participate in what the traditions call rasa.
Rasa, like a savor or a relish.
Yeah, an aesthetic juice, a deep appreciation or enjoyment that permeates experience itself. You're no longer chasing pleasant experiences because a baseline sense of richness and okayness underlies everything. Pleasure is found in the experiencing, not pursued as an object.
That sounds like the Gita's description of the Spita Praja, the sage whose wisdom is steady.
Precisely. Their inner contentment, their joy, is stable and independent of external circumstances because its source isn't out there anymore. It's recognized as inherent to awareness itself.
And this integrated way of being, where the transformation isn't just a peak experience, but your actual baseline, that has a name too, doesn't it?
Yes, the ultimate integrated state is often called sahaja samadhi.
Sahaja, meaning natural. Spontaneous.
Natural, effortless absorption.
Yeah.
It's not a trance state you go into and out of. It's a continuous dynamic equilibrium where the distinctions between the experience, the experiencer, and the act of experiencing just dissolve into one seamless flow. It's simply how you live.
And someone living from that state?
The sources suggest they naturally become a conduit for anugraha,
Anugraha.
grace, or compassionate energy flowing through them into the world. Not as a deliberate act, but just as a natural consequence of their own internal state of luminous coherence.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for someone listening? This whole journey, this radical transformation. It's a structural shift,
Definitely strict.
moving from representation needing external stuff,
Relying on symbols, models, dopamine hits.
through reflexivity awareness becoming aware of itself,
Turning inward, the pratihara and jhana phase.
to finally land in luminosity.
Self-sustaining, coherent svayam prakas.
So it replaces that desperate need. The mind has this centrifugal outward push for images, words, sensations, just to feel alive.
It replaces that with the ability to rest naturally in its own inherent vitality, its own stable, organized, living field.
And desire doesn't just disappear, does it? It transforms.
Into Icha Shakti, creative will. But it's a will that arises from fullness, from harmony, not from lack or craving. It's aligned with the truth of the whole system.
A will that flows from being, not from needing.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And maybe the final thought to leave everyone with, straight from the source material, is this. When the structure of your awareness finally becomes transparent.
Like cleaning that smudged window pane we talked about earlier.
Exactly. When it's finally scrubbed clean, there's nothing left distorting or obscuring the view. What shines through is simply the original light, the inherent, unbroken radiance of being itself.
Wow. That is definitely a deep dive, something to really consider, the difference between a life run by chasing those fleeting phasic bursts versus one lived from that inherent tonic luminosity. Which operating system do you want running your reality? Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.